I allow them? Dear, one day this too shall pass. This too shall pass. It was her mother's favorite saying. Even though it didn't come from the Bible, Hannah thought it was certainly helpful to remember. Hannah felt like it was beginning to have some rejuvenating effects on her as well. Ever since she'd run home with that envelope full of photographs, Hannah had been waiting for this awful time in her life to pass. Her parents had taken her worries seriously, especially since it was not the first time Trent had taken a photo of her or made her feel uncomfortable. It hadn't even been the fourth or fifth time. He'd been hounding her for months, doggedly trying to get her to accept him. Even the significance of her baptism meant nothing to him. But his photo of her dressing in the window had been a turning point. It signaled that Trent was becoming far more invasive and brazen. His note was angry and almost taunting. Even the police had agreed. Hannah and her parents had been sure that Trent's stalking of her was only going to get worse. However, after the police had informed them that since there were no fingerprints on the note, envelope, or photos, and that it had simply arrived at the restaurant, there was nothing they could do. Hannah was still at Trent's mercy. When Hannah started shaking so much at the thought of being photographed by Trent again, her father allowed her to quit her job and stay at home. When another photo of Hannah was mailed to their house, the one of her reading out on her back patio, Hannah stopped even venturing outside. She refused to go to church. She started withdrawing from her work friends. Then she began to avoid Kirsten and her other Amish girlfriends. But more photos still arrived with alarming regularity. Then her parents announced that they were going to move to Kentucky, and not to just one of the more populated Amish communities either. Instead, they were going to live in Hart County. It was in the middle of the state, in the Cavern region, a place not exactly known to be farm-friendly. And it was known to be fairly off the grid, even for the English. Ben and Jenny hadn't been happy about the move and had been vocal about it. Hannah could see their point. They'd both had lots of friends and part-time jobs. They'd had lives they enjoyed and a house that was both comfortable and their family's legacy. In addition, Berlin was busy and bustling. There were a lot of Amish and a lot of things to do. Where they were now living, in the outskirts of Munfordville? Not so much. Because of all that, Ben and Jenny had been cross and rude, and because they couldn't take their frustrations out on their parents, they took out their grievances on Hannah, which was why she desperately needed a break. Stepping to the side, Ma'am plucked Hannah's black cardigan sweater from the hook. "Enough talk. Put on your sweater and go on a walk." "I don't know if I can." "You can if you want to try. Just go, dear. It doesn't have to be for long. Maybe just for 30 minutes. 30 minutes. 30 minutes of freedom. 30 minutes of putting herself at risk. If she could do that, she would be proud of herself. She needed to do that. Swallowing hard, she nodded. "All right, Mutter. I will give it a try." Her mother gave a little clap. "Good. Good for you." Then, to Hannah's bemusement, she thrust Hannah's sweater into her arms, and before she could slip one of her arms through a sleeve, Ma'am opened the door and kind of shuttled Hannah outside. "Off you go now. Enjoy the walk in the fresh air." Just as Hannah was about to thank her for the push, her mother closed the door. Staring at the thick panel of oak, she felt a burst of panic bubble up inside her. Before she quite knew what she was doing, she'd reached for the handle. Then she realized that she was once again going to let her paranoia take hold of her. "No one is outside this house watching you," she told herself sternly. "No one cares who you are or what you do. You're simply another girl living her life, here in the middle of Kentucky. That's all." At another time in her life, she might have thought that she was being a little hard on herself, but today the harsh language seemed to be what she needed. It was time to stop living in the past and begin thinking about her future. A future without fear. A future where she could be herself once again. And if she did that, she could also have a future where she wasn't spending most of her time with two siblings who wouldn't want her there in the first place. Feeling a bit like a small duckling being encouraged to fly, Hannah slipped on her sweater and stepped